the festival of St. Michael. The statue of the Archangel stands on the gable of the Cathedral of St. James in Šibenik. Faces from the Renaissance era, stone heads hidden in the darkness of the cathedral wall, seem suddenly brought back to life by the flashes of light. Like a stage curtain being drawn back, the rising sun reveals the cathedral in all its glory. This is one of the most outstanding works in the history of architecture. There are more colossal churches. Indeed, the dimensions of the basilica are almost modest. Yet the grandeur and harmony of this moderate building are overwhelming. The cathedral gives this small town on the Adriatic coast of Dalmatia its identity. Unlike neighbouring coastal towns, Šibenik cannot boast of having been founded by the Illyrians, the Greeks or the Romans. Although it was not mentioned in any document until 1066, from then on the Croatian settlement of Šibenium grew quickly under the protection of its mighty fortresses. Blessed with a natural harbour, Šibenik's prosperity was of a maritime nature, as shipbuilding and seafaring flourished. Self-confidence marks the features of the statues. They seem to disregard the shadowy figures who, full of curiosity, try to intrude into the past, into their world. The expression on some of the faces seems even derisive. Were they able to speak, they could reveal secrets that are not recorded in any history book. 71 lifelike heads. No saints or demons, but the unique concept of humanizing a church building with the effigies of people who lived at the time. This was the work of a brilliant artist, Juri Matej Dalmatinac, who shaped the architecture of the cathedral over 3 decades. The instructions for the architect and sculptor were both banal and demanding. The cathedral had to be higher, wider and bigger than the church which had previously stood on the site. Juri was born in Dalmatia but worked in Italy. When he was summoned to Šibenik, the new episcopal church had already been under construction for 10 years. Another century was to pass before it was completed. Dalmatinac's work was continued by another master, Nicola Ferentinac. The new building at the heart of the old town was consecrated in 1547. Its sophisticated simplicity received widespread acclaim. From then on, Šibenik too could count itself among the most important cultural sites in Dalmatia. Of all the arts, architecture is most clearly the mirror of the age and its sense of form, which can of course change over a long construction period. But it is nearly always external influences that make further development possible. This is known as cultural transfer. Medieval Šibenik was a city shaped by the Gothic spirit and style. But in Juri Dalmatinac, it had hired an architect who in Italy had experienced and adopted the beginnings of a new and powerful intellectual movement, humanism. Humanism also sought a different form of expression in architecture. Christ, the judge of the world, at the apex of the Gothic main portal. Like Adam and Eve, in the Middle Ages this was a typical motif for church entrances. The statues and all decorative elements on the north facade of the cathedral, its best side, were fashioned uniformly in Gothic style with delicately twisting string courses. Only a small projection indicates that the original construction plans were altered. A new age, new forms, the Renaissance, a rebirth of the classical ideal of beauty. Undecorated wall surfaces were united by massive cornices to create great forms. Stone blocks chiseled with great precision were assembled without the use of mortar to form massive wall sections. This was a new construction technique. The new style not only meant a change of decorative elements, it also signified a different view of the world, one that was secular and self-confident. Faith in divine omnipotence began to compete with the belief in progress. Man was becoming more and more aware of his own creative powers. Through science and technology, new dimensions were opening up in architecture too, to the glory of God and for man's own fame. New and unique, the Cathedral of St. James is the only sacral building in Europe to be built entirely of stone, including the barrel vault and the cupola. No other materials were used in its construction. Large intergrooved stone plates were inserted in the vault ribs. Thus, a self-supporting roof arches over the nave. This totally new system was devised by Nicola Ferentinac. Since there is so little plastic ornamentation, the relief frieze surrounding the nave is particularly conspicuous. Only on closer inspection does the significance of this seemingly abstract decoration become apparent. It's a representation of the north and south winds, feared by seamen along this coast, created so artistically by Yuri Dalmatianac. Do most of the townsfolk see the value of this wonderful church and its architecture? Or does it lie far more in the prayers that have been said here for centuries and in the celebration of the Eucharist? A work of art and a profession of faith. The stark portrayal of the suffering of Christ on the cross, a timeless sculpture from the mid-15th century. In the flow of time, centuries pass like seconds. And even though guidebooks only mention the fateful events in the town's history, when its inhabitants sought refuge in the cathedral, human destiny, with all its banality, drama and comic elements, presents itself every day in front of the stone facade. Here, the human comedy unfolds. Whether it is with a ponderous or a nimble gait, everyone who walks past the limestone wall of the basilica does so as if they were on a catwalk. Convinced that no one is watching, without exception, they all pose in their own special way. Original sin and the expulsion from paradise. The strife-ridden history of mankind has threatened this unique edifice with destruction time and again. But, irrespective of the weather, the performance by the townsfolk is a daily ritual that has remained unchanged for centuries. And yet the locals scarcely look sideways at the cathedral, which is such a natural part of their lives. Perhaps they couldn't even tell you what is so special about a building that is so familiar to them. But there is one thing they all remember. Even though the holes from the shrapnel are no longer visible, the lighter blocks of stone in the facade indicate that not many years have passed since the last war here came to an end. The basilica and Šibenik's old town seem to have grown together. The octagonal dome is almost omnipresent. It's the outstanding work of architect Nicola Ferentinac, who is thought to have studied under the celebrated Brunelleschi in Florence and Donatello. Like an octagonal crown atop the massive cube of the intersection, the dome gives the basilica a special architectural note. Between the vault ribs, a total of 12 stone plates have simply been intergrooved. Positioned beneath the golden wings of the angel is the keystone, which lends the vault its stability. Normally, the sophisticated system behind the self-supported construction is hidden from view. It only came to light when damage caused by the recent war was repaired. The Cathedral of St. James in Šibenik, a monument to technical progress in architecture and a house of God. A statue of St. Peter, the apostle who, according to the New Testament, was given the key to heaven. Meaningfully located beneath this niche is the baptismal chapel. Compact and filigree, it is one of the gems in the history of architecture. Another masterpiece by Yuri Dalmatianac, in which Gothic form elements are harmoniously combined with those of the Renaissance. Shell-shaped niches symbolically widen the space towards the 4 points of the compass, a sign that God's almighty power extends over all the earth. At the apex of this divine vault filled with angels, God the Father looks down on the font. Thus, with each baptism, the biblical scene of Christ's own baptism in the River Jordan is repeated vividly and symbolically. In this chapel, so rich in images and significance, it becomes clear that the sacral and art historical importance of this room is not determined by its size. In the eyes of the faithful, a Christian's path of pilgrimage begins with baptism. Every year, at the festival of St. Michael, the inhabitants of Šibenik still declare their belief in this pilgrimage with a procession through the streets of their town. Sometimes it seems as if the bounds between the living and their stone ancestors have been erased, even if the effects of sun, rain and wind have made their skin a little porous. The stone, the time, and the light, the course of the sun and the shadows cast. It is only through this interplay that the architecture gains depth and becomes complete as the elements of the various style epochs merge. The yardstick for them is man himself, a self-confident creature, but one who, with the weather subject to change, is not averse to enjoying divine protection.